Why does the wealthiest nation on Earth allow over 500,000 people to sleep on its streets each night? Homelessness in America affecting more than 580,000 individuals each night. According to the latest HUD figures, exposes a system that's failing at its foundation. This crisis drains billions annually from emergency rooms to prisons, and lost potential highlighting deep flaws in the American ideal of opportunity.
I don't know, at 15 when I started getting high too. It was easy at first. It was real easy. I've been tricking since I was 25. In 8 days, I lost my Mercedes, my job, my kids when I relapsed.
It's a direct challenge to our core values, urging us to address the systemic failures fueling this crisis. Still in the face of adversity, glimmers of hope shine through with innovative solutions. Join us as we explore why this issue endures and how we can fight back. Like, comment, subscribe, and share to help end homelessness in America together. The fentanyl epidemic, a deadly catalyst for homelessness. At the core of America's homelessness dilemma is a devastating force, the opioid epidemic, with fentanyl as its deadliest component. This potent synthetic drug has spread rapidly through cities and towns, leaving destruction in its wake.
We need to get these people off the streets so they can start healing after years of trauma of living outside.
In 2024, fentanyl was linked to tens of thousands of overdose fatalities, with a concerning number of these victims already grappling with homelessness. Why is fentanyl so perilous?
It was already right there, so it was like I woke up one day and it was like I was just an addict. And then it was just around the whole time, so it's like I think I used, it was like the first week I started using it, I thought it had only been like 3 days and it'd been like 7.
Its affordability and extreme addictiveness ensnare vulnerable groups, turning the hope of stable housing into a far-off and unachievable dream. For many, fentanyl isn't just a health crisis, it's a guaranteed path to the streets. As people fall into addiction, their ability to hold a job, find housing, or even secure basic necessities like food and shelter is completely stripped away. The ramifications are widespread, impacting families, communities, and whole cities with the heavy toll of this deadly drug. Individuals who already contend with challenges like poverty or mental health issues are often the hardest hit by fentanyl addiction, driving them further into the cycle of homelessness. Unfortunately, treatment programs that could help break this vicious cycle remain severely underfunded. Across the U.S., community health centers and nonprofits are overwhelmed by the rising demand for addiction services, with hospitals left to deal with the aftermath, spending billions annually on overdose-related emergency visits. But this goes beyond just financial costs. It's about human lives, and the failure to provide adequate care results in more individuals slipping through the cracks. What happens when those ensnared by addiction choose fentanyl over the possibility of shelter or recovery? How can we break this tragic cycle when the resources available to help are already stretched thin? The answer is clear. We need a comprehensive, integrated approach that combines addiction treatment with housing solutions. Without addressing fentanyl directly, any attempt to resolve the homelessness crisis will be ineffective. Moreover, the stigma surrounding addiction as a personal failing, rather than a public health issue, only exacerbates the problem. It makes it more difficult to allocate the necessary funding and resources for effective programs. While cities are beginning to experiment with creative solutions such as mobile treatment units and harm reduction partnerships, scaling these efforts requires political will and a shift in public mindset. So how long can we continue to ignore the growing link between fentanyl and homelessness? As the epidemic tightens its grip, can we afford to delay real lasting change any longer? The answer lies in a bold systemic overhaul, or else the cycle of addiction and homelessness will keep spiraling out of control. The affordable housing void, a structural failure. Behind the opioid crisis and other key factors driving America's homelessness epidemic, the critical shortage of affordable housing. Nationwide rents have soared, yet wages have remained stagnant, leaving many Americans unable to afford housing. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, there isn't a single state in the U.S. where a full-time minimum wage worker can afford a two-bedroom apartment at market rates. In cities across the country, affordable housing options are vanishing while the demand for inexpensive living spaces continues to grow, particularly in urban areas where jobs are plentiful but housing costs are astronomical. This housing shortage didn't occur by accident. It's the outcome of decades of policies that have placed profits ahead of people. Strict zoning laws, often enacted to preserve property values, have made it increasingly difficult to build affordable housing. As a result, low-income families are being pushed out. Gentrification has also played a significant role, replacing affordable housing with upscale developments. For those living paycheck to paycheck, single parents, retirees, and low-wage workers, even a single setback, like a medical emergency or job loss, can lead to eviction and ultimately homelessness. So why does the wealthiest nation in the world struggle to provide basic housing for its people? The impact of this housing gap is clear. Without affordable options, people are forced into overcrowded shelters, unstable living conditions, or worse, the streets. This lack of stability creates a vicious cycle, making it harder for individuals to keep jobs, access health care, or improve their lives. Federal programs like Section 8 are meant to help, but they remain underfunded with waiting lists stretching for years in many cities. Local governments also face significant resistance when attempting to build affordable housing, with residents often shouting, "Not in my backyard," NIM, fearing a drop in property values or an increase in crime. However, some communities are pushing back with creative solutions. Cities like Minneapolis are revising zoning laws to allow more multifamily housing, and other areas are exploring tiny home villages or converting commercial spaces into residential units. But these efforts are still too limited to address the full scale of the problem. Fixing this issue requires bold policy reforms, simplifying zoning regulations, investing in public housing, and incentivizing private developers to build affordable units. Until housing becomes a top priority in America, the homelessness crisis will only continue to grow, leaving millions vulnerable to falling through the cracks. Mental health care, a system in collapse. At the core of America's homelessness crisis is a critical factor, the collapse of the mental health care system. An estimated 25–30% of homeless individuals struggle with mental health issues ranging from anxiety and depression to more severe conditions like bipolar disorder and PTSD. Yet access to ongoing consistent care remains out of reach for most. Since the 1980s, federal and state budget cuts have dismantled mental health services, shutting down psychiatric hospitals and severely reducing community-based programs. This has left millions without the essential support they need to function, let alone thrive. For those facing homelessness, mental health issues are both a cause and a result of their circumstances. Without proper treatment, conditions worsen, making it nearly impossible to hold a job, maintain relationships, or secure stable housing. Many individuals resort to self-medication, alcohol, street drugs, or prescription misuse, driven by desperation, but this only intensifies their instability. Shelters and outreach programs already overwhelmed lack the resources to provide specialized care. As a result, many find themselves trapped in an unending cycle of despair. The shortage of psychiatric beds, reduced by over 50% since the 1970s, forces individuals in crisis to turn to the streets or worse, jail. This failure goes beyond the individual, placing a significant strain on communities. Public services, from emergency responses to incarceration, are stretched thin. Jails have become makeshift mental health facilities, with up to 20% of inmates suffering from serious mental health conditions, often worsened by homelessness. How have we allowed the system to deteriorate to this extent? What happens when society fails to provide mental health care for its most vulnerable citizens? Can we continue to overlook the profound role mental health plays in homelessness, or is it time to act? Some cities are beginning to implement mobile crisis units and peer support programs, but these efforts are underfunded and inconsistent. The question remains, how can we ensure mental health care is prioritized not only for those already in crisis, but for everyone before they fall through the cracks? Addressing this issue requires a massive reinvestment in mental health infrastructure, more clinics, more psychiatric beds, and more trained professionals. Why is mental health care still treated as a luxury in the wealthiest nation on earth? Until we rebuild and adequately fund the mental health system, the cycle of homelessness will continue, leaving countless individuals trapped in a never-ending state of limbo. How many more lives must be lost before we confront this crisis head-on? And how many more people will fall through the cracks before we take action? Social inequities, systemic barriers to stability. Beyond the well-known issues of addiction, housing shortages, and failures in mental health care, social inequities are a critical factor in perpetuating homelessness in America. Discrimination in housing and employment, particularly against marginalized groups, creates systemic obstacles that make it more difficult for individuals to maintain stable lives. A stark example of this is the disproportionate impact on people of color and LGBTQ+ individuals. According to the 2024 HUD data, Black Americans make up roughly 13% of the U.S. population, but account for nearly 40% of the homeless population. This substantial disparity results from decades of discriminatory practices, such as redlining, restricted access to credit, and biased rental policies that have limited opportunities for stable housing. Similarly, many LGBTQ+ individuals, especially youth, face rejection from families or landlords, often leaving them with no choice but to turn to the streets. Another critical but often overlooked factor is the lack of identification. Many individuals experiencing homelessness lose vital documents like their driver's license, social security card, or birth certificate. Without these even basic tasks, like opening a bank account, applying for a job, or accessing public assistance, become nearly impossible. This sets up a vicious cycle to get a job. You need an ID, but to obtain an ID, you need a job and the necessary documents, both of which are out of reach for those without stable housing. This bureaucratic catch-22 keeps individuals locked out of essential systems, reinforcing their marginalization. These social inequities extend beyond the individual, affecting entire communities. Marginalized groups, particularly people of color, face higher rates of poverty, which makes them more vulnerable to homelessness. This creates a broader societal divide, where disadvantaged groups feel overlooked and abandoned by the system. Public mistrust also increases as these communities often view the system as rigged against them. Some cities are attempting to address these challenges by offering free IDs or providing anti-discrimination training for landlords, but such efforts are often underfunded or inconsistent. Tackling these systemic inequities requires sweeping reforms, stronger anti-discrimination laws, easier access to identification, and policies aimed at bridging generational wealth gaps. Without addressing these root causes, homelessness in America will remain a persistent issue, undermining the nation's promise of equality. These measures may please certain residents, but do nothing to tackle the deeper issues. Only by confronting these inequities head-on can America begin to build a fairer, more inclusive system that supports those in greatest need. Economic and social costs, the price of inaction. The consequences of homelessness extend far beyond those living on the streets. It takes a significant toll on both America's economy and its social fabric. Economically, the crisis depletes public resources, costing billions each year. The healthcare system bears a large burden, with emergency room visits for untreated medical conditions or overdoses, often surpassing 10,000 per case. Law enforcement also experiences increased strain responding to complaints about encampments or minor offenses like trespassing. These incidents, typically caused by necessity rather than malice, divert police resources for more pressing concerns, worsening the issue. Additionally, the loss of workforce productivity when individuals are unable to work due to homelessness adds to the financial burden, with cities losing millions annually in these hidden costs.
You're jaywalking.
I am jaywalking.
On a social level, homelessness strains community stability. In urban areas where encampments are visible, tension often grows between residents worried about safety, sanitation, and property values, and those advocating for the homeless. These issues ignite debates about how to balance compassion with public order, creating rifts within communities. Neighborhoods near makeshift camps often witness falling property values and rising public health concerns, which only deepen local tensions. This problem isn't confined to a single area. It's a nationwide issue that underscores the difficulty of effectively addressing homelessness. Beyond its financial and social costs, the crisis also carries a moral weight. A country that permits over 500,000 people to live without shelter must reflect on its values and priorities. While the economic toll is staggering, the human cost of neglecting systemic failures is far more significant. Some communities have discovered ways forward using programs like rapid rehousing or community land trusts to help stabilize families while maintaining neighborhood integrity. However, these solutions face barriers such as public indifference and political gridlock. To truly tackle homelessness, America must invest in both prevention and long-term solutions, reducing the financial, social, and moral costs of inaction. By doing so, the country can foster stronger, more cohesive communities. Barriers to solutions: why progress stalls. Despite the pressing need for action, progress in addressing homelessness in America remains excruciatingly slow, held back by political, financial, and social barriers. One of the primary challenges is the lack of coordination between federal, state, and local agencies. Resources are often wasted or duplicated, with programs like HUD's Continuum of Care grants failing to reach their full potential due to bureaucratic inefficiencies. For instance, while HUD allocated $3.6 billion for homelessness programs, much of it gets tied up in red tape and doesn't reach the communities that need it the most. Another significant obstacle is public opposition, often referred to as the not-in-my-backyard NIMBY mentality.
Hey, brother, you want...
Proposals for affordable housing or support centers are frequently met with resistance from local residents who worry about property values or safety. While these concerns are valid, they form a barrier to progress and prevent innovative solutions from being implemented.
Go when they left.
Zoning laws
This
and
street
prolonged
was
permitting
bare.
processes in many cities add more delays, further complicating the construction of housing that could help mitigate the crisis. Financial limitations also play a key role. Programs like Housing First, which have proven to be effective in permanently housing individuals without preconditions, are underfunded and unable to meet the national demand. Political division further hinders progress, with some pushing for punitive approaches such as criminalizing homelessness, while others call for compassionate, systemic reforms. This divide prevents cities from implementing unified strategies, leading to fragmented solutions that fail to address the crisis on the necessary scale. To overcome these barriers, bold leadership is essential, along with public education to change attitudes toward homelessness. We must prioritize long-term solutions over short-term measures and move beyond political divisions to confront the root causes of homelessness in America. Conclusion: homelessness in America is a crisis rooted in broken systems, including addiction treatment, housing, mental health care, and social equity, but it is not beyond resolution. Models like Housing First and public-private partnerships demonstrate that progress can be achieved when resources and determination align. The way forward requires investment in affordable housing, comprehensive mental health services, and policies that address systemic inequity. Join us in this effort. Volunteer, donate, or advocate for change. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this video to amplify the call for a nation where no one has to sleep on the streets. Through collective action, America can rebuild its systems and fulfill the promise of opportunity for all.